I love horror movies, and I love professional wrestling. And I love when they cross over too. It's my two favorite things coming together to create something really cool. And that's what we get with today's macabre subject. Join me as we take a look at Dark Match on this episode of Ringside Review. Welcome back to WWH. My name is Andrew Dreamer. Dark Match was released recently on Shudder, and to be honest, I've been looking forward to this one ever since it was first announced. Obviously, there have been a few other horror movies that have to do with professional wrestling, but I feel like this one is probably of better quality than most of those, at least to the best of my knowledge. So yeah, I was really excited for this movie. But did it live up to my expectations, or did it fall flat? Let's dive in and find out. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, shout out to Jey Uso for winning the Rumble. Yeet. Anyway, moving on. Dark Match was written and directed by Lowell Dean, and it also features a pretty good cast, including Jonathan Cherry as Rusty Beans. Jonathan Cherry is probably best known for his role as Rory in Final Destination 2. You also have Michael Ogg as Mean Joe Lean. Ogg is famous for his portrayal of Trevor in Grand Theft Auto V. And of course, I can't forget Chris Jericho, who plays Prophet in this movie. Like I said, there's a great cast involved here, and that was honestly kind of the selling point for me. Before we jump into the plot, be sure to body slam that subscribe button as hard as you can so you never miss any of the hard-hitting, chill-inducing 5-star matches we have here at WWH. It is bell time though, so grab your popcorn and make your way to your seat. Let's head down to the ring. Dark Match tells the story of a small independent wrestling promotion that accepts a pretty good payday to put on a show in this backwater town.
Where exactly are we headed? As far as I know, a real rural spot.
But once they arrive, they learn that not everything is quite what it seems. See, this town is run by a cult leader who has some devious plans for the event. Jericho plays the cult leader, and what exactly are his plans? Well, to sacrifice them to the Dark Lord, of course, but that's not even really his main motive. He's also a disgruntled former wrestler who holds a grudge against the company, and he's out for revenge more than anything. That's basically the gist of the plot. But let's talk about some of the wrestlers now. You got some really interesting characters such as Thick and Thin, Kate the Great, Misbehave, Lazarus Smashley, Enigma Jones, and Kid Humble. There's some irony behind the name Kid Rumble too, since he has the crowd finishing his catchphrase every time. Now, the show itself features 5 matches. You have a wind match, an inferno match, a water match, earth match, and a spirit match. Each one of these matches is quite literal too, and it's a fight to the death. On that note though, I think it's time that we take a look at some of the positives of Dark Match. Alright, first of all, I do want to say that this movie is a lot of fun. I mean, I had a good time watching the movie, and it was a way that I could kind of just enjoy horror and professional wrestling for about 90 minutes. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a very serious movie, but it doesn't take itself too seriously in those kind of sillier, over-the-top moments, which is something that I enjoy. When a movie takes itself seriously when it's being, super goofy and it's just ridiculous, and it comes across that way, and I don't like that. But this movie does a good job of balancing those two things. It can be goofy and over the top and ridiculous at times, and it's also a serious movie, but not so serious that you kind of just lose interest in the movie, if that makes sense. At least that's how it works in my head. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy and the way that my brain works is different than everybody else's, but that's how I saw it. Like I said though, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of really gory, over-the-top moments that I appreciate quite a bit as well. The practical effects in these moments are done pretty well. I didn't see a lot of CGI in there, and if there was CGI, it wasn't, egregious or anything like that. So I thought that they did a good job of making those practical effects and all the blood and everything look really good. I enjoyed Chris Jericho's performance as Prophet in this movie too. He, has been in Terrifier 2. He was in Terrifier 3 in a slightly larger role. He's done some other acting over the years as well. But Here is kind of when he gets to really show his acting ability a little bit more. Now, he's not, Leonardo DiCaprio or anything like that, but he is a pretty decent actor, and I enjoyed his performance in this movie, and I thought it was really a good way to get some extra eyes on this movie. It made a lot of sense to cast him in this role, and I thought that he did a really good job. And overall, the premise of the movie is just really cool. I mean, you have these wrestlers, and it's kind of like this 1980s aesthetic. They're an independent promotion, they're not the big leagues, so they're trying to make money any way that they can. So they accept a pretty large sum to go perform for this community, and that's when it all goes to hell, quite literally in this movie, actually. But just the overall premise of it is really intriguing, and I think that there are a lot of really cool ideas here that they explore. There are a lot of different ways and layers and different turns that this movie takes, and for the most part it all made sense to me. It wasn't one of those things where you look at it and go, wow, this is just dumb and stupid and ridiculous. No, I didn't think that at all. I mean, I enjoyed the ride that this movie took me on. I mean, it was, like I said, it was a quick 90-minute movie. It didn't overstay its welcome. It didn't feel too long or anything like that. So yeah, I enjoyed quite a bit about this movie. But that's not to say it was perfect. I did have some issues, and why don't we go ahead and switch over to the negatives now and talk about those. Okay, so for me, one of the biggest issues I had was the lighting throughout the movie. There were a lot of really dark moments in the movie, and it was kind of hard to see what was going on. And when there weren't those dark moments, you did have some, bright lights in there during the daytime scenes, and I, was kind of like shocked how much I could actually see in those shots. But for the most part, it was a very dark movie, and there was also a lot of these color washes. The entire movie was just bathed in these color washes, and that's not something that I ever enjoy. There are a lot of movies that choose to do this, and it could be for a number of reasons. Maybe they were trying to cover up some of the production value issues, things like that. You never know why they choose to do it, but it's never something that I'm a fan of, and it really kind of took me out of a few moments in this movie when I was trying to ignore the bright blue lights that are bathed over everything, or the red lights. It's a lot for me, and I don't ever enjoy seeing that. Like I said, there were some decent performances in this movie, specifically from the main cast, but when you get to some of those supporting characters and background actors, the performances aren't great, which, can kind of be expected in a movie of this level with the budget that they had. It's understandable. It's not too bad or anything like that, but it was definitely noticeable for me. Now, there are a lot of twists in this movie. I mentioned, enjoying the ride that this movie took me on with some of the turns and things, and while that is mostly true, I do feel like some of the twists that they added into this film were twists for the sake of having twists. Like, they just included them in there so they could have something in there and make you go, oh my god, I didn't see that coming. And, that's usually okay, but when it's twist after twist after twist, then it kind of becomes distracting in a way, and that's how I felt about it. And the last thing that I'm going to mention is I honestly kind of felt like I knew the entire story going into this movie, and I think that comes down to the marketing of the film more than anything. I think that the plot description of the film basically gave away the entire plot. Yeah, that's just my opinion. Maybe I shouldn't have read the plot description, but when you get interested in an upcoming movie, you go to IMDb and the plot description's right there. I mean, it's kind of hard to avoid unless you just absolutely go in completely blind without knowing anything. And that's doable to an extent, but for me, when I see a movie called Dark Match announced with Chris Jericho and it's about professional wrestling and it's a horror movie, I'm going to look into it a little bit at least. So that's how I feel about that. Overall, though, this is a pretty fun movie with an interesting premise. It's set in the world of professional wrestling, which I love, and automatically means I'm going to enjoy it to at least some extent. I don't think it's a great movie, but it'll definitely keep you on the edge of your seat. There are a lot of twists and turns and layers to the story, so I don't think that you'll be bored with it, even if it is a bit ridiculous. I do think the marketing, specifically with the plot description, gave too much of an insight to the film. I would have rather they just kept it a little bit more vague, But again, that's just my preference. But that's going to do it for this episode of Ringside Review. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about Dark Match, or if you plan on watching the movie. If you are interested in Redcon One products, I have a discount code that you can use to save 20% off of your entire order. Be sure to check that out. You can also find all of my merchandise available at prowrestlingtees.com/AndrewDreamer or right under this video. Also, head over to Patreon and check out our WWH Patreon page and consider joining us over there, or if you would rather, you can become a member right here on YouTube. All of the links are in the description below. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss any of the action here at WWH. Now that we've reviewed Dark Match, what are some of my horror hot takes? Luckily, you can find out by watching the video that is appearing on your screen now. And remember, in the squared circle of horror, there are no countouts for nightmares. My name is Andrew Dreamer, and this is Wrestling with Horror.